Hello everyone and welcome to a very special video, as today is the day when legendary Grandmaster Yuri Averbakh is celebrating his 100th birthday, and it's hard to to condense such an accomplishment into one video. But I decided to show a game from the 1954 USSR Championship against a legend in his own right, Efim. You guys know a lot about him since we've covered many of his games, and well, he was around during many of our sagas, and it's a very special tournament for Averbakh, as he wasn't a very well-known player in those days. He only became a Grandmaster like 2 years in 1952, so 2 years before this tournament, and even though they knew why everyone was invited, because they've invited 20 of the strongest players of that era from the Soviet Union, they either had to have like a specific result from a certain tournament or have had a really impressive results over the course of the half of the year or something like that. But it is, I believe, still unknown why Averbakh was invited here. But history enjoys such events, as if you guys remember from the Capablanca saga, there is a very certain tournament where Capablanca, when Capablanca arrived, they didn't really think that he belonged there, because this is only for really strong players. There was even that clash with Aron Nimzovich, but well, we all know how that ended, as you guys watched the Capablanca saga. This is very similar, and he basically came on the scene by winning the 1949 Moscow Championship. So that was his first big event. We have him here. He played in the candidates tournament once in 1953, and he came this close to qualifying for the 1959 candidates tournament, the legendary one where, well, we all know who won by playing the 1958 interzonal tournament in Portorož. He was half a point behind the requirement for qualification for the candidates tournament. But that being said, this is a very special tournament, and this is the game I chose. I could choose any other because he has so many great games. You guys will enjoy this one. So without further ado, let's check it out. Geller has the white pieces, and he opens with e4. Averbakh plays c5. He goes for the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3. We have knight to c6, and now d3. Geller goes for the old Sicilian defense. We have g6 and now g3, preparing the castle. So this is a system you can play pretty much against not against everything, but against a lot of stuff. You're gonna fianchetto to the light square bishop, castle, king side, and you will play something like a4 to prevent b5, and you wanted the c4 square for your knight here. So it's a very solid system you can play against a lot of things even today. So bishop to g7, we have bishop to g2 and d6. I forgot to mention, Averbakh was around for so many historical events that he was he wasn't alive during the Alaska Capablanca match for the World Chess Championship, but he was born like 8 months or something after that match. So he was around for he is still around for a very long time. So here we have castles by Geller, we have knight to f6 and knight b to d2. So like we said, we want to play a4, put the knight on c4, and this will be a very good setup. We're going to have a very nice control over the e5 square, and white is perfectly fine here. So here we have castles and a4, securing that c4 square for the knight, so we can't chase it away. We have bishop to d7, knight to c4, and now the position can very well happen even today. Queen to c7 is a known move by today's standards, but here Averbakh just plays d5. He says, all right, I'm not allowing you to continue in your safe system. Let's open up the center and see what happens. Now you could play knight to e5, makes sense as black vacated the square, but now just e captures on d5, knight captures, and rook to e1. And it is now, as of move 11, that this position has never been reached again since 1954. And now we have queen to c7. Averbakh continues the queen, he connects the rooks, and it's white to move. So knight to g5. It's a good square for the knight. If black wants to kick it away, you're going to have to weaken your king side, and until you do so, we are not moving our knight from g5. Also, now you could start pushing those pawns, maybe h4, h5, everything is on the table. We have knight b6, offering a trade of knights here, as this knight is excellently placed on c4, and knight back to e3. We have a5 now, and white starts the attack with h4. Now h5 is coming, so Yuri says, okay, let's kick the knight away with h6. e6, we have knight to e4, and now knight to d4, saying, okay, you're gonna play c3 at some point, I'm gonna shift my knight over to f5. So here we have h5 first, g5, of course we're not opening up the position, and c3, kicking away the knight, knight to f5, and now queen to b3. So a nice square for the queen, asking black, what do you do here? So black, of course, not interested in trading and helping white develop his piece. He just goes knight back to d6, says, okay, if you want to capture, I'm gonna capture, and then, well, I will have a very strong center. So knight to d5, attacking the queen and the knight here. We have captures, captures, and now comes knight captures on e4. We have queen captures on e4, seemingly attacking the e7 pawn, but not really. Averbakh just plays rook to b8. He says you are welcome to grab the pawn, but capturing the pawn, it just equals game over, because after rook to e8, your queen does not have a square, so you just have to part with the queen. So after rook to b8, queen to d5 was played. Now, okay, rook captures on e7 is a threat, so e6 attacking the queen, queen back to a2, and now comes bishop to c6, offering a trade of bishops. So queen back to c4, now saying if the bishops get traded off, maybe I can play d4, you're not going to be able to capture since your queen will be hanging, and it's a much more active square, as unlike the a2 square. So here bishop captures on g2, king captures, and queen to c6 check. We have queen to e4 now, offering a queen trade, and rook f to d8. Now Averbakh says you are welcome to double my pawns here, but that's not really gonna do all that much. You have a backwards d3 pawn, and I'm just gonna double up rooks on the d file. My position is just better. And of course Geller agrees with this, so he just continues development, bishop to e3, and now rook to d5. Not just defending this, but also preparing to double rooks on the d file. As we mentioned, the d3 pawn is a backwards pawn, it's gonna be very weak. Here we have rook a to d1, and it's a move that pretty much anyone would play. You want to bring more defenders to the d3 pawn, but it doesn't work. But white's position is really bad, even though it's hard to realize why. Aside from having this d3 weak pawn, you have to play something like c4, and it's an ugly thing to do, but it kind of has to be done. For example, c4, we're gonna play queen, rook captures on d3, and you've lost this pawn. The rook cannot be captured because the queen is pinned, but it's hard to understand why you would make such an ugly move. Here, rook a to d1 was played, and now the problem is white is completely lost. But black has several good moves to choose from, and it's not always easy to find the killer blow when you have many good moves to choose from. But you guys are comfortable in your own homes. Over 60 years have passed since this game, so feel free to pause the video here and try to find this incredible idea for black while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on righting the wrong so many years later. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is of course pawn to f5. And now when you see this move, you might think, all right, what happens next? I'm just going to move my queen. So queen to f3. Now we play g4. Okay, we move the queen even further, queen to e2. Now we play f4, and we can never forget that the queen and the king are on the same diagonal. And now the problem is, if you capture with the bishop, rook e5 check, and that's it, you lose the queen. Nothing to be done here. And if you don't, after e4, you could capture with the g pawn. Doesn't matter. We're just gonna play whatever, rook captures on h5, and now how do you defend this? You are in check. If you move the king, you are getting checkmated with rook to h1, so you have to play something like f3, but then g captures on f3, queen captures, and now rook to h2 with check, and you have to part with your queen. Of course, king g3 is met with rook to h3 check. Once you capture, queen captures on f3. So everything is losing here, and well, it's a very tricky move to find, but like I said, it's easier to find such a move when you don't have any other good moves. But here Averbakh played rook b to d8, and his position is still much better, so he didn't maybe want to spend all that much time, and if you don't know that it's there, it's not all that difficult to miss it. So here Geller realizes what's going on. He quickly plays king to f1, and now we have c4. Now this is what Averbakh saw. He said, all right, now you can't really capture. I'm allowing you to play d4, which is good for white, but you are losing the a4 pawn, and then I'm just going to play b5, b4, and win the game. So that's the plan. So here, d4, we have queen captures on a4, and now g4, preparing to start an attack here because that's pretty much all that's left. Queen back to d7, getting ready to push those queenside pawns, and now rook to a1. We have a4, and now rook to e2. We have b5, and now rook a to e1. So white can just wait and see what happens, but Averbakh does not rest. He just continues attacking b4. And now if you capture this, then bishop captures on d4. White's position just falls apart. So instead, after b4, we have f4. Now trying to create some sort of a kingside attack. Maybe if this opens up something, then maybe rook can come here. Maybe we can do something. It's all very far-fetched, but you have to try. So g captures on f4, bishop captures on f4, and now a3. So we're creating a pass pawn regardless of what white plays. Rook to g2. Now preparing to push the pawn, and now not rushing with anything on the queen side, even though you could perfectly play this perfectly fine. Just queen e7. We regain control over the g5 square, and white is without any real threat. So queen to e3, adding another piece to cover the g5 square, but now just queen f6, pinning the bishop. So king to g1, and now a captures on b2. So here Averbakh allows g5, but he calculates everything precisely, and that's why this game is so cool. g5, h captures on g5. Now not bishop captures. If you capture with the bishop, we can just give up the rook here, because, well, now b captures on c3, and that, those pass pawns are just unstoppable. The queen cannot capture as the rook is hanging here, so no play there. So instead, bishop to e5, now saying, okay, if you move the queen, rook captures on g5, or queen captures, and then it's game over. So of course now Averbakh has to give up the exchange. Rook captures on e5, d captures on e5, and now queen captures on e5. Even this, because the pawn mass on the queen side is just too powerful. Queen captures, bishop captures, and now rook captures on g5. And Averbakh doesn't even try to cover with the bishop. He just plays king to h7. And now look at this. Rook g captures on e5, b captures on c3. Now the pass pawns are incredible, but you are down a rook. So here, rook to b5, ready to, if c2, then we can pick up the b2 pawn. It's perfectly fine to play c2, but Averbakh decides to end the game in great style. He plays rook to d1, and it was in this position on move 46 that Efim resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The rook will be captured. If you capture black's rook, then c2 comes with tempo, and now the pawns are just too strong. If rook f1, we're going to bring a queen into the game, and that's it. For example, captures, you are now in a lost endgame. And of course, if you don't, after rook to d1, you can play some like king f1, but it doesn't matter, just c2. And now after, well, whatever, rook captures on b2, we can play rook captures, king captures, c1 check. We're going to pick up the rook as well, and the game is completely winning. So that's the game is enjoyable for many reasons. One, for missing the f5. It's really crushing. I don't know the situation on the clock here, so the Averbakh could have been in time trouble, but also it's not that easy to spot. Especially if you have another good move that just forces a winning position. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and just so we don't forget, let's also check out the standings of the 1954 USSR Championship. Here are the standings. As you can see, Averbakh won first place ahead of some incredible names here with 14.5 out of 19, so full point and a half ahead of players like Korchnoi, Taimanov, Petrosian, Lisitsin, Kolmov, Suetin, even Rashid Nejmedinov played here, Furman, Bishev, Efim, Borisenko, Flor, Banik, Lilienthal, Levitsky, Vyacheslav Ragozin here, Leonid Shamkovich, Livshin, and Sokolsky. So incredible names. Like I said, 20 of the strongest players of the Soviet Union were invited to play in this tournament, and Averbakh prevailed against them. As you can see, 10 wins, 0 losses, and 9 draws. That's just incredible. The only other player, some other players have had 0 losses, but you can see that Taimanov also 0 losses, but 12 draws. And also, interesting fact, Averbach's daughter, can't remember the name, but Averbach's daughter married Mark Taimanov. So that's fun fact to know. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So many of you suggested I show a game for his 100th birthday, and of course I was going to do that either way. But always thank you for suggesting great stuff. So if you guys know of a certain game that we could show, like I said, I've checked out many, and this is the one I decided to show because it's super enjoyable. So I hope you enjoyed that as well. But yeah, feel free to use hashtag suggestion if you have any more cool recommendations. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Patrick Mulcair, my coach, for providing a place for Meadow to chill, Tepsley for being the best, Richard Knapp and the Hoodie Knight for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE Grand Prix until it ends. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.